Hey, good morning, gang. Oh, hopefully you guys can hear me. This is a roaming prepper, and today we're going to do our Sunday SITREP, 28th of February, 2021. And today we've got a lot of interesting stuff going on in the world, so I'll invite all of you to go and check it out yourself. But we're going to be covering things ranging from coronavirus, of course, to a new outbreak of Ebola to rioting. So I'm going to break it down by Pacific, Atlantic, and domestic. That might make it a little easier for folks to do their own research. So, sorry, headset. Okay, so out in the Pacific, I'd reported last week that Myanmar, Burma, basically had a overthrow. The military took over the government for whatever reason out there. Well, right now, the government decided they're going to start shutting down comms. So they've pinched back, as is typical for military coups and dictatorships. They pinch back cell phones, Facebook, Twitter, basically all electronic comms. Furthermore, they're requiring a special license for things like a sat phone. So if you're traveling to Southeast Asia, um, there's also some issues in Malaysia, and I haven't gotten full details of that yet. But be advised, you may need to register your sat phone if you're traveling. To me, that's a pretty big deal because now they know you have one. If they decide to really lock down, they can come find you at your hotel and take your phone. And there's really not much you can do about it. You don't have your constitutional rights in other countries. In any case, those guys are having a bit of a problem. Now, China in the Pacific, that's topic number two, also causing some problems. So they basically decided they own the South China Sea. I reported that on a previous video. What they're doing now is actually running off fishing vessels. They've been doing it for a while, but they're getting really aggressive now. So Vietnam and China have been kind of following each other's gunboats around in a show of force. Uh, so the US decided to roll a destroyer right through the middle of all the islands that China has made into forts. The Chinese did not like that. And that was partly in response to them flying 12 heavy bombers just on the edge of Taiwanese airspace and then toward Japan and freaked everyone out on our end. There's been a lot of puffery in that part of the world. So if you go there, pay attention to what's going on in the countries you're visiting. There's a lot of oil and gas, there's a lot of manufacturing. A lot of folks from the West have reasons to go to that part of the world in Southeast Asia. Be aware these things are going on. It could complicate your being able to get out. It could put you at risk for kidnapping or being imprisoned for whatever reason. Keep a low profile out there. Okay. I'm wearing the patriotic shirt today. I don't wear this overseas. As a matter of fact, I try to look as innocuous as possible. Again, something I covered on another video, do's and don'ts for civil unrest. Um, while we're talking about Malaysia, China and Malaysia uh, are having issues. Malaysia is adjacent to a very lucrative deep water oil field. And I believe as Petronas is the national company for Malaysia, is allied with a lot of other countries in developing these resources. China has recently started sending military ships, frigates and destroyers and gunboats to intimidate and harass these platforms. They're also trying to put a platform in a space that, by international law, everyone knows belongs to another country. These provocations are not light. What they're doing is they're constantly pushing the envelope and getting an inch at a time until it gets to a point that someone's going to have to react. Their hope is that nobody will. So again, a lot of instability, Southeast Asia, specifically around that area south of Korea, China, basically Korea, China, Philippines, and Vietnam, Burma, that whole area is kind of at risk. So Be aware what you're doing, plan your trips, make sure you have contact people who are reliable in country. If you rent a car, you take a cab, take a picture of the license plate and the vehicle you're about to get in and send it to someone. I do that regularly. I go overseas, I'm going to take a cab or a car service. I'll load my own bags and I'll tell the guy, no, I'm good. And then I'll take a picture of the car. And if I can get a picture of the damn driver, and I'll send it to my wife, I'll send it to a coworker, I'll send it to someone else. So, little trick there if you're traveling internationally. Moving to the Atlantic now, the EU has stated several countries may decide to add a COVID vaccine passport, if I'm saying it right. So I don't know if it's an endorsement on your passport or if it's like a separate document, basically like your green card or vaccine, showing that either A, you've already had it and you're immune, or you've had the vaccine. And they won't restrict you from traveling if you don't have it, but you are subject to additional testing and a quarantine on each side of the border without it. So, a lot of folks are saying, well, England and Israel have already gotten way ahead of the vaccines. The US and larger countries, again, US and Germany, places like that aren't, but you can't compare Israel, that's about the size of New York State and has 10 million people, versus the US with 300 million, which takes up a whole continent. It's not an apples to apples comparison. But in any case, EU starting a plan to do a vaccine passport. If you're traveling in that part of the world, make sure that you are aware of those restrictions. You don't want to go for a business trip and wind up in a 2-week quarantine. I know a lot of people are hesitant on the shots. If you got to do business, you may have to suck it up and get the shot just so you can go in and out quickly. I don't like doing it like that, but it is what it is. Also, Atlantic, which is more Mediterranean, as everyone has read, President Biden ordered airstrikes on Iranian militias in Syria. Um, this has been the first incident of his administration engaging in a foreign act of aggression, or engaging in aggressive actors overseas. Apparently, the Defense Committee in Congress had no idea, and actually, some of his fellow Democrats started speaking out like, "Hey, you got to give us a heads up. You can't just bomb people." Um, Sadly to say, whether you're a fan of the president or not, or the prior one or not, the president is the commander in chief. They can take certain actions if they deem it necessary. What this will do to a bigger picture, I don't know. I know Iran is being pressured with that nuke deal that the prior administration backed out of because they felt they weren't honoring it on the Iranian side. The current president may be kind of pushing some buttons to see if he can get leverage. We don't know. It's not in my wheelhouse to know that kind of stuff. But in any case, again, Middle East, a little bit of violence going on is around Syria, which has been ongoing for years now. And EU, you may need a COVID shot or be subject to quarantines or additional testing. Plan your trips accordingly. You should minimize travel according to the CDC, but if you have to go, and sometimes you do, plan accordingly. Lastly, domestic. Okay, so New York City, there's now a lot of hearings and investigations involving the nursing home deaths. The governor in New York put COVID patients into nursing homes, not knowing, I guess, what else to do with them. Wound up secondary, it wound up causing a lot of secondary deaths. Um, he's under fire for that. More importantly, they hid the numbers, and then they lied about hiding the numbers, allegedly, and then it came out. So the feds are involved, the AG's involved. There's a lot going on. That particular governor's under a lot of heat. Now, to add to that, he was accused of sexual assault or sexual harassment, some kind of sexual crime of an admin several years ago. He got accused of that last week. She came out. Well, now a second person has come out and she's gone public, like her face, her name, everything, saying this guy was inappropriate to me. So now you have multiple things going on in New York City. New York doesn't need that now. They got a lot of people, a lot of issues with COVID. There's crime has spiked. New York City's still having a lot of crime issues. I'm hearing subway pushings, literally tossing people in front of subway cars, has gone on the rise like it was in the 70s and 80s. A lot of drug use. It's been a mess. I've spoken to people who've recently been there or actually are from there and have said, yeah, we're moving out. We're going to go somewhere else. Screw that. So again, New York City, not very stable, having some issues. And remember, you may be subject to a quarantine if you go there for business. Plan that trip accordingly. Portland. Portland having new riots. Again, now the rioters, who do include Antifa, according to this news, are protesting ICE, immigration customs enforcement, and attacked the ICE building, and then they decided to burn local stores and bars. In any case, multiple businesses are now reporting that they're closing. They're done. They thought this year would stabilize. They knew last year with the COVID and the election there would be instability, but they're like, come on, let's move on. They can't do that, so the businesses are shutting down. Speaking of Oregon, 5 Oregon counties have all decided that they want to be part of Idaho. So they did actually make a formal petition, as is the rule of that state, and they had enough signatures, even after disqualifications, to pass. So those 5 counties are going to hold a special election. I don't know how that works, but in theory, per the constitutions of both states, if I read it right, if those counties lawfully and legally vote to go elsewhere, though they can become part of Idaho, which would totally screw up Oregon's electoral vote. And I don't know what that would do. That would just be weird. But in any case, a whole chunk of Oregon wants to not be part of Oregon anymore because of the riots and the behavior there. Moving down to the Southwest U.S., Texas grid and water still being repaired. Houston just got their water up middle of this last week. Big Spring got their water back, which is a mid-sized city up in the middle of Texas. Lubbock got theirs up pretty quick. Dallas is kind of hit and miss depending on the water municipality. There's a bunch of hearings over the grid. The grid had a pretty epic failure. It's not designed to have rain, freezing, snow, sleet, freeze up the windmills, freeze up the gas pipelines. I mean, there were a lot of things happened at once. No operator error. I think the personnel did everything right. It was the system is not designed for that weather because that's so unusual here. The last time that happened was supposedly 25 years ago, 30 years ago. They do need to address it, and they're having hearings in Austin. Most of Texas is back online. If you're traveling to Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, call ahead, talk to the hotel, ask them what the status is of power, ask them quarantine requirements, if any. I would recommend, as much as it sucks, if you're going to make some business trips just to make your life easier, get a COVID test before you leave and take a copy of the paper with you, just so you don't have to deal with the bullshit. Guys, that's all I have this morning. That's the Sunday SITREP for the 28th of February, 2021. If you're on the road, Godspeed, and to everybody else, be safe, be ready, and pay attention to what's going on. Until next time, you guys take care, and I look forward to seeing you later this week. Bye.